Hey, I'm Sheena Shuey. I'm a registered social worker and host of the 4Q podcast. I'm passionate about normalising, not pathologising life, and that's not easy. So each episode, I have amazing guests on to share the messy, beautiful ups and downs of life in 4 key questions with tips and tricks along the way. There are moments in life where you can embrace your story and understand that it's okay not to feel okay sometimes. So let's get into it. This is the 4Q podcast.
Okay, so today's episode is the truth about relationships. Now, this is a tricky one, so I want to reflect on this for a moment, as we do with our 4 R's of reflect, redefine, redesign, and realign, our 4 questions. So I'm reflecting on the truth about relationships in terms of people who come to relationship coaching or counselling and those sorts of things. You know, you're really looking for an answer or a way to make things better. Now, I want to redefine this for a moment because the truth about it is that what the truth I wanted to reveal is that you can have all the relationship tips and tricks in the world, but there's 2 truths really. One is that unlike individual counseling where it's one person having to action the task or action the new habit, there's 2 people to be held accountable. Now, we all know how hard it is for one person to stick to creating new habits and new ways of thinking, let alone 2 people doing it together. So in that sense, creating new habits as a couple can be really tricky because 2 people have to be held accountable. Now, this can work in 2 ways. It can work really positively in that if 2 people are super committed and really want to make it work, they will hold each other accountable and they'll do it. If one is slacking off or not really interested in making the relationship work but hasn't been able to find the words or find the courage to say that yet, that might come out as not doing the activities, not following through, not following what's discussed in either counselling or coaching or what's done in the course, what's recommended in our relationship course. And the other partner sort of left feeling like, oh, this didn't work, it's the course or the coaching that didn't work, when really it takes 2 people to action that. And that's where I want to get to the real truth I wanted to talk about today, which is you can have all the tips and tricks and relationship stuff, and you can be even actioning all of the things that healthy relationships do, that successful relationships do. And even then, if you just haven't picked the right partner, or you've outgrown each other, or you're just no longer in love with each other, then it's not going to work. And that's a hard truth to come to. You know, there are some couples who, by the time they get to coaching or counseling or doing a course, things are already so difficult because they just don't want to be in it anymore. And I think this never give up mentality in our society sometimes can make us feel like, okay, I've got to do every single thing possible before I tell my partner I want to separate. And actually all that does is just drag the pain out longer. You know, there's this one partner fighting for this relationship, hoping it can turn around, wanting it to change. And the other partner just hasn't found the courage to say, I can't do this anymore, or I don't want us to be together anymore. And, you know, we lean into comfort. We lean into what we know, the devil we know. It's so easy as people to get sort of routined into, you know, like we get so comfortable in our weekly routines, our daily routines, you know, our household routines. So when we realize that we no longer want to be with someone, the spark's not there, there's nothing really bad happening sometimes. So yes, some couples might have a serious issue like dealing with infidelity or trust being broken. But really, if you look back, a lot of couples, there's this point in the relationship where there's a lull. There's like no spark, but nothing bad is necessarily happening. It's not like you don't like each other or you hate each other or anything like that. It's just that it's very mundane. Or it could be the other thing too, where you're starting to just have arguments a lot, like you're picking at each other over things that are so insignificant or things that seemingly don't matter, and it just seems like you're so far away from who you used to be. And so I've seen couples come back from the brink where they just think that they argue all the time. There's been issues around cheating and trust being broken, and they've turned it around because they've been able to reignite that spark and actually go, there is something still here, and let's fight for it. But sometimes that isn't the case, and sometimes relationship counselling or coaching actually brings that to light. So let's talk about like a redesign example of what that means. So redesign is when we talk about tactics or things that can help us redesign our life in a way that really aligns with who we are. And in relationships, one of the tasks I always try to get couples to talk about is there's values, so our internal values, and then our goals. So you've got your intrinsic values of, I want to be a loving parent, I want to be a good friend, I want to be someone who can be reliable and there for people. Those are really intrinsic values you can hold yourself accountable to. And I get couples to talk about that with each other. And you can have completely sort of different values in that way and still be perfectly aligned. So that's not an issue. Where the issue comes in is around the goals. Where do you see your life going? Now, life is unpredictable. We never know what's around the corner. But there's certain things that we know we want to achieve. So a really common thing is a couple might talk about, okay, we want to have kids. In one person's mind, it's not for another 5 years, 8 years. In the other person's mind, it's in a year. But if unless they talk about their 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 year goals, you're not going to get aligned with each other on that. You're not going to be clear about where we stand with certain things. And maybe you don't even know for yourself. Have you ever stopped and thought about, what are my 5-year goals? Like, who do I want to be in 5 years? What do I want to feel like in 5 years? How do I become that person? If you want to be someone who's calm and grounded and healthy and who meditates, or who's calm, like I said, what things are you going to do to get there? You're not going to magically just wake up there. You're going to have to do something to get there. So it's imagining that, and then also asking yourself, like, what do you really want? Sometimes people actually want to go back to uni, or they want to, have children, or all of those things, and it needs to be clearly articulated with your partner so you're on the same page. Sometimes we assume that we're on the same page, but unless we explicitly say it, it's not clear. So again, a classic example of thinking you're on the same page and you're not is one person's idea of a clean kitchen and the other partner's idea of a clean kitchen are two different things. One partner might think it goes without saying to clean the windows or to clean behind the sink, where the other person just does the benches and the sink and the dishes and that's it. Like, people, you need to explicitly say what it is that you like or what it is that you want. Don't ever think that your partner knows unless you've said it before. And even then, saying it more than once isn't a bad thing. Of course, you don't want to nag and nag and nag, but, being clear succinctly is there. So if we talk about realigning, which is just staying on track and keeping clear, this is what I want you to take from this episode. The truth about relationships is they take work. They take a lot of work, and they take a lot of tips and tricks. Healthy relationships, non-healthy relationships, every single relationship that's going to work, bring you joy, spark love, needs consistent work. But the other truth is that sometimes, even with all the tips and tricks and actions in the world, if you're no longer into each other, you're no longer compatible, you're outgrowing each other, you're no longer in love, those tips and tricks don't matter anymore. And I think if you take something from this, what I want you to remember is, if you're humming and hawing about your relationship, do something about it and be honest with yourself. I think sometimes, unfortunately, in Western culture, we've created this idea that you have one true love, and not just Western culture, but a lot of stories and tales about one true love, one perfect person, and they sail off into the sunset and happily ever after. I truly believe that you can have more than one true love in your life. Maybe you have a love in your 20s and 30s. Maybe you have another love in your 40s and 50s. And then maybe you have another love later in life. That is perfectly okay. Each of those people during that time gave you what you needed, fulfilled something in you and you for them. You created memories together, both good and bad. But either way, they taught you something about yourself. They pulled something out of you. So even toxic relationships, you learn that you accept toxicity, and you have to change to no longer accept that and to put that toxicity away. That grows you as a person. It's not something you chose, and it's not okay, but it grows you. And so just remember that it's totally okay to do the relationship work and realize that it's not working anymore. A lot of people will say, oh, the kids, or I'm worried about, breaking up our home. Every single person on this planet, but children especially, we unconsciously sense the tension, the energy. And so if you're sort of unhappy, if you're not sparking and bringing joy into the day, kids feel that tremendously, and you will feel that too. It'll dim your spark. And so be real with yourself, be honest with yourself, and do things that bring the spark back. Now, if you're sort of confused about where your relationship's at, or you want some tips and tricks, please feel free to contact us for relationship counselling or coaching. And we also have our heart and soul reset, because we all know how hard it is to get certain partners to the room. Everyone has this idea about what is involved in relationship coaching or counselling. So if you find that you've got a partner who's dragging their feet, please feel free to check out our Heart and Soul Reset course. It's on the website. It's the cost of literally one session of our coaching, and it's got all the same activities that you can do self-paced whenever you want. So go check it out. All right, have a lovely day. I wish you nothing but the best. Thank you for tuning in, and I will speak to you next week for another episode of the 4Q podcast. See you then.